This is Crown, operating through Daniel Luke, the Office of Executor for the Shoals Daniel Luke Estate. It is the 11th of September 2020. We bring this transmission to you to unpack the legal name. That very full legal name that all corporations and de facto pesky trading companies, namely government, would like to obtain from you in order to have joinder and access to the estate, which is tied to the birth certificate. Without further ado, come on and let's go take a look.
So we're talking about proof that the all caps name is a legal entity. So, and I've got separate bullet points here. So the first one is writing a name in all uppercase letters, such as Alex Stefan, is not a proper noun or name according to proper English grammar, and is a debased form of Latin text. The proper form of Latin would be Alex-Stefan if you were in fact to write it in Latin, which you shouldn't be to begin with. When the hyphen is removed, this becomes two separate names belonging to two separate people. So Latin is actually the opposite to English. When we use a hyphen, we're actually, let me get my bearings straight. Okay, so them using a hyphen in Latin is the equivalent of us putting a full stop between two words, which then makes them two separate sentences or two separate issues. So in Latin, the hyphen joins the two names together. The equivalent of that would be Alex full stop Stefan full stop, which then becomes two separate people. So in English, it would be Alex and Stefan, which implies that we're talking about two people here. So the example that I gave is Alex and Stefan went to the beach instead of Alex Stefan went to the beach. Okay, so the next point that I have is in Black's Law Dictionary, the word name or nomen. The point that's made in Black's Law Dictionary is that if you don't know your name, you are lost. So if you're not able to articulate your name in the proper way, in the proper grammar, it basically means that you don't know who you are and you are presumed lost or presumed dead at sea.
So,
Yep.
that said, because we know when children are young, you know, they're a master. But when they turn 7, they lose that master and they're called a mister.
That's correct,
Okay?
yeah.
So with that said, you know, then they're deemed lost, and there is that trust pertaining back to the birth certificate. So someone's administrating that. So I can see what's going on there because they're lost. You know, the governments are actually administrating the trust from the absence of Alex Stefan being there as an executor, taking control of it.
That's correct. And I think they're only known as master up until their 8th birthday. Once they hit their 8th birthday, so for the first full 7 years of their life, they're a master. Once they hit their 8th birthday, they're from then forward known as a mister. Okay, so moving on. Point number 3, dog Latin is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as the Latin of illiterate persons. Latin words put together into the English grammatical system. So it's like a anglicized version of Latin. It's kind of mixed up. It's the Latin that people would have been speaking in the early part of English history, before the English language was properly developed, and they were speaking a mixture of Latin, which is what they would have been speaking before English, and then it's kind of an in-between kind of language. The act of using the base Latin in documentation is an act of fraud. and renders the document a counterfeit or void. And if you want to see a proper form of Latin, I might be able to bring one up here just quickly. Let's see if we can get a clear picture here of the front of the St. Peter's Basilica. Not sure if we can make it out in this picture here, but you'll actually see, because as you all know, the official language of the Vatican is Latin. And if you look at the text on the front of the building, see these symbols in between each word? Every word is joined with this symbol. This is proper Latin text. But when you remove these symbols, you're actually then creating separate sentences according to Latin grammar. And that's
yeah. So for example, Daniel Luke Smith would be, or let's go a bit further. Mr. Daniel Luke Smith would be Mr. full stop, Daniel full stop, Luke full stop, Smith full stop. So there's three and then a title.
Correct, which means you're actually talking about three or four separate people.
That sounds more not like a people. That sounds more like a human. Because the human takes on several appearances.
Yeah, true. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's right. So you're talking about separate entities, or you're talking about a division. We're not talking about the same person here. Yeah, correct.
So what's happening then is that from me believing on what's addressed to me in a document from the government, for example, is three different people or three different entities.
Correct.
So they're treating me as a human, which is a monster of some sort, a godless thing.
Correct. And if you look at a monster, one of the other definitions of a monster is an aggregate. So when we think about Frankenstein was an aggregate of different body parts sewn together in a mishmash kind of way. That's a monster. And so when your name is written out in the incorrect way and they're making you out to be separate humans or separate people, that's essentially what's happened. That's what you've become on paper. Okay, so moving along here, the next point is that, so point number 4, conversion, the legal meaning of conversion, the action of wrongfully dealing with goods in a manner inconsistent with the owner's rights. So when they change your name into all uppercase text and they're creating a legal fictitious entity out of you, they are unlawfully converting you, which means they're depriving you of your rights. Number 5, all caps names are word marks or trademarks. That's the other point as well, typically. Point number 6, names should always begin with a capital followed by a lowercase letter. And this is according to the Australian styles manual. I need to fix that word there.
Yeah, okay. So the all caps names are word marks, trademarks. So a Mr. Scholes, thinking a trademark being owned, it would then be owned by perhaps the Registrar of Births and Marriages then.
Possibly, yes, correct.
So for me to use that, which isn't mine, would be illegal, right?
You could say that unless they've given you permission to use it.
Yeah, because isn't it said, I'm not sure if it's on your birth certificate or you could recite the yes or a no to the question, but doesn't it say that you're not to use your birth certificate for identification purposes?
Correct.
Yeah, it says that. Yeah, it does. I'm not sure if mine says that. I don't think mine actually says that, but I've heard that many people's birth certificates do say that.
Yeah, mine does.
Yep. Okay, so moving along. So as I said, the Australian Styles Manual, and that's actually on the government website. I actually copied and pasted this straight off a government website. It actually says all names should begin with a capital letter followed by lowercase letters. So my question then would be, how is this all capital name my name when it doesn't even go along with the Australian Styles Manual off the Australian government website?
So it'd be a good question then, perhaps, to ask. You know, what styles are being used here on this document? Is it the Australian Styles Manual? Is there a bit of Chicago style in here as well, or whatnot? Because what you've mentioned earlier, I'm not sure now because I can't see it in front of me, but I believe that some other things you've mentioned come from the Chicago style manual too.
Correct. That's coming up now. So point number 7, the Chicago Styles Manual is actually the official standard used by the Australian Bar Association for all documentation and legal purposes. Okay, so point number 8, the 16th edition of the Chicago Styles Manual, which is chapter 11.1.44, and 17, the equivalent of that is in the 17th edition is 11.1.25, entitled Sign Language, which is 11.1.28. Basically what they're saying there is that the type of text that's being used, and they provide an example, which I'll get to, is also referred to as American Sign Language, which is derived from Latin. It's a form of Latin typically known as Dog Latin.
Okay, so that's interesting too, because the pages are 666. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it?
So what you're saying then is, so documents come from the government with perhaps different forms of styles from different manuals, but they're using two forms of, you know, because we've got proper English text, which is you could say as a jurisdiction, right? Proper English. And then we've got symbolic, which is sign language. So we've got two jurisdictions. So,
right. And that's referred to as a diglossa. I'll get to that in a minute.
Diglossa. So if one's literate to know that there's two jurisdictions, perhaps one could say, I do not consent and agree to this document because it is not following customs and accord to their own manuals, perhaps. Would that be correct?
Exactly. So they're using two different languages in the one document, and that's actually known as fraud when they're trying to pass something off, because we understand that if you're using some language other than English, proper English, then that other language may also come under different grammatical rules that we may not even be aware of, and it may because of that, it may actually be saying something that we may think it be saying one thing, but it's actually saying something else.
So in simpleton terms then, it's much like a document coming with, say, Chinese, symbolic, the way that they write things, and then we've got the Australian language half-half. So in simple terms, if you got that, you'd be like, hang on a second, this doesn't seem right. Much like the glossa and the proper English text.
Correct, exactly. And this American Sign Language is actually under the section entitled Foreign Languages. So,
So it's much like Chinese then, a foreign language.
Correct. So it is actually a foreign language as far as grammar is concerned and all that. And as I said, if we look at it, we'll think it's saying one thing, but because it's using different rules, it might actually be saying something totally opposite to what we think it's saying.
Sneaky.
No two languages can have jurisdiction with each other. Similar with similar and dissimilar cannot be united into the one document. This is actually a maxim of grammar and of law as well. And by the way, this is all copied and pasted straight out of the Styles Manual. This isn't my text. This is actually the Styles Manual. I just wrote it out. Gloss in American Sign Language. So if you want a definition for that, you go to the Chicago Style Manual, chapter 11.147. The written language transcription of a sign is called a gloss. Glosses are words from the spoken language written in capital letters, where two or more written words are used to gloss a single sign. The glosses are separated by hyphens. The translation is enclosed in double quotation marks. So to write in proper gloss or in proper language, you would have to use the joining marks in between, like I showed you in the picture of the Vatican earlier. When you remove those joining marks, you're actually creating separate sentences, which separates the words, all of the words into separate sentences, making it gobbledygook when it doesn't mean anything. So the written language transcription is a sign of a sign is called a gloss. Glosses are words from the spoken language written in capital letters, where two or more written words are used to gloss a single sign. The glosses are separated by hyphens. The translation is enclosed in double quotation marks. So for example, the sign for a car drove by is written as vehicle drive by. So this is the way you do it. This is typically how we see government legal documents and all that. They're often written like this, and usually they'll not include these hyphens, which then makes it into a dog Latin. One obvious limitation of the use of glosses from the spoken or written language to represent signs is that there is no one-to-one correspondence between the words of signs in any two languages. So between the dog Latin and the English, or between the Latin and the English, or the American sign language and the English, there is a difference in the grammatical context and so forth. So if I write something in American, the American Sign Language, and you then read it, and you're assuming that I'm writing in English when actually I'm not writing in English, that's what creates the confusion. Okay, so point number 9, the Chicago Manual of Style, 17th edition, capitalization of personal names. Names and initials of persons, real or fictitious, are capitalized. Space should always be used between any initials, except when the initials are used alone. So it's telling you that the first letter of the name is capitalized, followed by lowercase letters, unless you're using initials. The Oxford Styles Manual, 5.3.1, page 89, says the same thing. Capital initials mark out the status of words so that the reader interprets them correctly. Ordinary proper names are usually recognizable even when they are set with lowercase initials. However, where proper nouns consist of common nouns and qualifiers, capital initials are needed to distinguish the specific usage from a general descriptive usage. So the rule is you always have a name with a first capital letter followed by lowercase, and you can actually have all lowercase as well for a name, which is actually what they just said there. But you never have them as all uppercase. Point number 11. Okay, so the question that Romley Stewart was asking is, what does it mean when two languages appear in one document? And this is his statement, it is the point of fraud when one is passing off a document to the unsuspecting victim that does not grammatically read what such a document is assumed to convey. Such an act of passing off a document that is not what it is believed to be is an act of counterfeiting or deception, in my opinion.
Wow. So if you're therefore illiterate, you're being suckered in. You're being played.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, you know, so the schools are ultimately teaching illiteracy, to be illiterate, because they're not mentioning any of this sort of stuff, are they?
Well, he actually mentions in his video that they took Latin and grammar out of the schools in 1966. I wasn't able to confirm that. Anyone else here know anything about that?
1966.
I wasn't around at the time.
I've read 1966 in a few articles here and there, so it sounds like the date roundabout.
Yeah.
Isn't there a saying though that one who is deceived? Oh, what is it again? I can't quite remember. Something like it.
One who will be deceived will be deceived. Or I get what you mean. You're speaking of the maxim of law, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's something along the lines like, you know, like if you're going to be deceived, or oh, geez, I can't quite remember it. I think I had it written down somewhere.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's your fault. You're going to be the one who suffers, basically. You know, that's what I'm getting at.
Yep.
And I think by reading such a document, you know, in two languages, well, you're the one being deceived. I know it's still counterfeit and fraud, but it's, you know, you're not illiterate. You're illiterate. You don't know what you're reading. So then you know, you're going to bear the brunt of it, sort of thing.
It's your fault for allowing yourself to be illiterate.
That's right. You know, it's not so much their fault that they've created a counterfeit document, but unless you can read it properly and then probably prove it in a court of law that it is a counterfeit document, well, then you're going to be deceived every day of the week.
Yeah.
You know?
Well.
Okay, so point number 12, the Acts Interpretation Act 1901, Section 2C, with references to persons. Subsection 1, in any act, expressions used to denote persons generally, such as person, party, someone, anyone, no one, one, another, or whoever, include a body politic or a corporate as well as an individual. Now, in one of the videos that I watched on the Justinian Deception channel, he says that this expression here, as well as an individual, actually unites it to the word corporate, meaning that they are actually one and the same. Meaning that we're actually referring to a corporation soul. Is everyone familiar with corporation's soul?
Yeah, that'll be the person. That'll be the sovereign.
So, correct. So a corporation's soul is essentially a separate legal entity that is you. And an example of that is the office of the Queen. So whenever we use the word the Queen, we're referring to the office of the Queen, as well as the Queen herself. They're one and the same thing.
So
Yep.
the office of executor.
Yep.
That's how I've controlled it with the office of executor, working from that. That's cool.
Yep. So what I would recommend is people, after we finish this video, type in corporation soul into Google and YouTube, and you'll see quite a lot about it. Another example of a corporation soul is the office of the bishop here in Melbourne. So you've got the person, the man who operates, occupies the position of bishop, and then you've got the office of bishop, which is the office that he occupies. When he passes away, the actual man himself, the office still exists. And then another man comes into his place and takes that office, and joins himself to that. So we're joining the man to the office. and joining the two together. That is the definition of a corporation sole. It's a corporation or a legal entity with just one person occupying the position of director, secretary, shareholder. Yeah.
Cool.
That's as simple as I can put it. Okay, moving along. Subsection 2, express references in an act to companies, corporations, or bodies corporate do not imply that expressions in that act of the kind mentioned in subsection 1 do not include companies, corporations, or bodies corporate. So these can actually also include those. Is that correct? Is that what it's saying?
Yeah.
You've actually got to sit there and read it like 3 or 4 times to understand it, don't you?
And that's the thing with the web of legislation and stuff like that. It really I mean, there's not much. It's pretty tricky with Australia, but in New Zealand, it's just in front of your face. It's quite simple to search for, you know, the remedy when it's to do with the Crown over in New Zealand. And it's suggested to really go over the New Zealand legislation and, you know, go through that. So then for comprehend it in the way that when you look at the Australian legislation, you can sort of see it. You know, it's like, there it is there in that legislation.
Mm. Yep.
And it obviously gives a reason for people to, you know, hire the solicitor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they could have just added these ones to that list, and they could have done away with this second point. Or are they perhaps trying to hide something by doing that?
Definitely.
Confuse the issue, maybe.
I think all 2 of them confuse the issue and hide some things in it.
Yep. Okay, so point number 13, a bicarmeral is a term, is an example of a language such as Latin, which uses both upper and lowercase text, but not within the same sentence or within the same word. So in Latin, I'm not sure how many of you know. So I know a bit about Latin because I'm fluent in several Latin-based languages. So I can interchange between them. And one thing about Latin is that you can write a sentence in Latin that's in all uppercase with the hyphens in between each word to join it all together. Or you can write the sentence in all lowercase. But you can't write the sentence in both upper and lowercase, such as in English.
Could you give us an example? Just write it now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So if I was to write the cat sat on the mat. So you've got all lowercase text there except for the first letter. You wouldn't do that in Latin. You would have it all lowercase, full stop.
And with no hyphens in the middle.
And you would have it with hyphens in between. So if I was going to write that using the Latinized version, it would be
Bicarmeral version.
Yep.
And then how would you write it in lowercase? Just same with, still with the hyphens in between? But all in lower? Okay.
I don't think they use hyphens for lowercase. No, I don't think so.
So the first part of your, where you've just typed there, the capital T at the start of the, that would just be a small, a lowercase letter.
Yeah, so yeah, that's correct. So yeah. I would write it like, oops, it's giving me the automatic capital.
So
it won't even allow me to do it.
So if you've got the capital there, that would be your proper English text. But then if you change that capital on that sentence there to lowercase, that there would be bicameral. Yeah?
Correct, yeah.
That's how you could identify that. So if it's all lowercase, you could refer it to bicameral.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so then point number 14, Unicarmeral, such as American Sign Language, which is only written in all uppercase letters without the hyphens.
Okay, so Unicarmeral is what we see a lot on the government documentation.
Correct.
Unicarmeral. Okay.
Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, why are they writing legal documents in American Sign Language? Is it because the documents are being issued by an American entity, perhaps? Or
yeah,
perhaps
maybe.
an American entity owned by the Vatican, which is therefore, that's why you get the mixture of the American Sign Language and the Latin.
Hey, that
Because-
does make sense, because I believe it's probably the Vatican, Washington, DC. Yeah, so yeah, I can see that.
Correct. So all documents issued by the Vatican are going to be issued in their official language, which is Latin. All documents issued by their subsidiaries, such as the United States, are going to be written in a mixture of the two. So that's a big clue there. Right there, you have a big clue as to who is issuing these documents really. Yeah. So point number 15, mixed case language is an example would be English, where we use both uppercase and lowercase letters within the same word or same sentence.
Okay.
Point number 16, a diglossia, which is what we mentioned earlier, is a mixture of two separate languages, such as English and American Sign Language, within the same sentence or in the same words. This type of writing is not a standard language, and it has no official sanction and is not codified. If it has no official sanction is not codified, it is not a language in any sense of the word.
Wow. Wow. So these documents that are coming from government organizations, and I suppose, any corporation, because they're just copying, the system, is of no official sanction and not codified. It's just whatever, which is nothing.
Correct.
Which is voidable.
Yep.
What a scam. Jesus.
So point number 17 is a case that I still need to look into in detail. This is just a note that I made because they referred to it several times in those videos. It is a case, a ruling on a case where they actually threw out all the evidence that was being used because it was using a diglossia, and they could not accept it in court. And so the person was able to show that the documents were written in a diglossic language, which is not an official language by any stretch of the imagination, and therefore the court threw it out.
So as king asking, you would perhaps ask what style they are using.
Correct.
What styles manual are you using here? Is it the Australian Styles Manual? Is it the Chicago Style Manual? Is this right here, madam? Is this Glossa, or is this Diglossia? Oh, not Diglossia. Rather, scroll up. I think it's 15, or 14, which is the American Sign Language, which is Unicarmeral.
Yep.
So that'd be some good questions to ask, I suppose, because not only you'd bring awareness to the individuals that are performing such things, you'd be null and voiding the documents.
Yeah.
After the fact, yeah.
So the way they write your name, what would that actually come under? Would that be Unicarmeral or Diglossia?
It would be Unicarmeral, which is the American Sign Language.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not in all cases though, because depending if
you're right.
Sentence with the boat.
No, you're right.
So yeah, exactly. So you know, we are writing to you today from the all capitals Australia government. So therefore it would then turn into, what would you call it?
Well, hang on, because on many birth certificates, the first name is usually lowercase with the first capital letter, and the surname is in all uppercase. So in that particular case, it would be a diglossia because they're mixing two different styles.
Yes.
Yes.
And you'll notice, you'll notice a variation as well. Sometimes you'll have a Mr. D, a D Jones, or a Mr. DL Jones, or a Mr. Daniel Luke Jones. I mean, now, I mean, we're looking at the diglossia here, but not only that though, but could they perhaps tie to different, I don't know, trusts or something that's been created, or different accounts that have been created from that, from the estate? I mean, what are they up to, and what's going on here?
Yep. Possibly correct.
Because it makes me think, it makes me really think though, Alex, you know, when you mentioned all this, because, you know, just visualizing the documentation and all the rest of it and the different formats they use, you know, coming to the light of what you've mentioned, it's just absolutely criminal.
Yeah, I agree. It is criminal. And that's why we need to clearly understand how to get out of this, which is what I was, you know, we were talking about before, about really understanding what Romilly Stewart was doing and how to be able to do it ourselves as well. Point number 18 is a point that Romilly made in his video, where he believes that what they're essentially doing is trying to convert you from one of higher standing to one of lower standing by getting you into that birth certificate in that particular kind of way. Okay, point number 19. Standard language. So the definition of standard language is a language that has an official sanction from an institution and is codified, such as by way of the styles manuals that we mentioned earlier. So the English language has those styles manuals, which are the ones we mentioned earlier up here. You know, the Oxford Styles Manual and the, where was it? The Chicago Styles Manual and all that.
The Australian Styles Manual, 6th edition.
What's that?
The Australian Styles 6th edition. And,
yeah, correct.
Exactly. And now, see, we mentioned that, page 516 of the Australian Styles Manual goes into titles. And I think I've mentioned this before, but it goes into military titles, and there's a few military titles there, but at the bottom of that subsection, it mentions Mr. and Mrs. And it goes on to say that Mr. and Mrs. is the lowest rank in the military. Now, yes. You know, I'm not seeing any war visually here, but when I come to think of it, we are in war by a foreign administrator. So that kind of makes sense. And how that comes about, you know, is is another topic for another time. But you know, your post box, and I've mentioned that before, is a military post as well. So, you know, your post box, you know, being delivered stuff in your post box is an offer to contract. We've got titles which are military titles, which are the lowest rank in the military. And when you speak of ranks and so forth, I mean, there is the word capitis diminutio, which there's many forms of capitis diminutio. We've got maxima, the greatest, capitis diminutico, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but maxima. It involves the loss of liability, citizenship, and family. Then we've got capitis diminutio media, next change of state. Capitis, it consists of a loss of citizenship and family without any forfeiture of personal liability, or liberty, sorry, personal liberty. And finally, capitis diminutico minima, the least change of state. consists of a person ceasing to belong to a particular family without loss of liability or citizenship. So,
Is that a quote? Are you quoting from the, what are you quoting from?
if you give me the share screen, I'll just pop it up.
Yeah, good.
It's just Wikipedia. But why I'm sharing that, if you would, you could look up that word there in Black's Laws as well to, you know, really unfold on the interpretation of that. So there we are. And you'll find that by just putting in Google the word there. And if you wanted to look further into the interpretation through a legal dictionary, you'd put the word in there and put Black's Law Dictionary on the end and hit enter on Google, and you'll come up with the Black's Law interpretation of that there as well.
You know what's interesting?
What's that?
In the Latin languages, that those words actually refer to the case of text. So, like when we say uppercase and lowercase, those words in Italian and French and Spanish are the actual words you use.
I see.
Yeah. Slightly altered, because that's a Latinized version of saying it, but it's pretty much the same word.
Yeah, all right. And yet we're seeing a demotion of rank. What, you know, rank? We're thinking military. You know, military post is in the post box, and ranks, and then the demotion or the you know, the lowest of ranks, etc. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind there, when it comes to person, I'm just going to bring up person here on a Black's Law interpretation and just have a look at that. I think there's something there, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
When you say how you're being demoted, like with your title, etc., you know, Mister and all that sort of stuff, when you're a kid, and we mentioned this earlier, when it was in regards to being a master, what does there anything in the styles manual that you've seen that refers to the master? Is that a military title, or is that something completely different again?
Yeah, no. So we in the I think it's the Sestuikevi Act of 1666 and some of the other Sestuikevi acts. For the first 7 years of a person's life, they hold on to your trust, and it is expected that by the time can you help me clarify this, Daniel? It's
certainly.
Something about 7 years before you have to claim your estate or something?
Well, the master being little baby Johnny. Now, baby Johnny's born, and for the 7 years of his life, he holds or has control as the master of that estate. And after that 7 years, little Johnny's no longer a Master Johnny, he's a Mr. Johnny. And in Admiralty laws, when it comes to, say, there's a ship on a beach or a boat on a beach, now if that sits there for 7 years, nobody's claimed that, well, you can claim it. So this is what the government have done. They've claimed it. So in the way, perhaps, that they administer that estate from that time forward, until such time, perhaps when you get the key for your 21st birthday, if you're aware of certain things, you may go back and say, hey, Johnny's back from sea. I'm not lost anymore. I'm here to administer the estate. Thanks very much for taking care of it for the duration of time that you have. I'm back.
Yeah. Okay, give me 2 minutes, guys.
Yeah.
All right, now.
So if he claims his estate before his 8th birthday, he never becomes a Mister. He remains a Master. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure. And it's interesting because Clint did bring that question up, because we talked about the styles manual and titles and, you know, Mr. and Mrs. So perhaps I think Clint was trying to figure out if there was any mention of master in there, and if there was or wasn't, what is a master? So perhaps we'll actually look up some definitions of a master and see where that could perhaps lay in
Yep.
in this matter. And in the meantime, before we get too far away from what we were speaking about with ranks, military posts, titles, the denotion of and lowest of ranks, we'll bring up the definition of person. Now, I was right with what I thought in the back of my mind. A man considered according to the rank he holds in society, with all the rights to which the place he holds entitles him, and the duties which it imposes. So we have some sort of a rank there. So the rank that he holds in society. So I suppose Johnny's 30 now, and he receives something from the government sort of thing, and the system that the government work in is all in presumptions, and there's a Mr. Johnny blogs. So he opens that up. Well, I suppose when he's done that, he's confirmed that, he doesn't really hold a rank, or if he does, it's the lowest rank. So Johnny's just really nothing, and will continue to be controlled by the administrator, accessing his trust, where he really, he has, because of the ignorance through the education system and whatnot, doesn't know who he is, and believes he's just a Johnny, a mister. He doesn't gain the fruits of usury here in heaven on earth. Because heaven on earth, it makes me think, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Not lead into temptation, to deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom forever and ever. Amen. So just finishing this section here off, a human being considered as capable of having rights. Well, I suppose he'd be capable if he exercised them, right? Of having rights and of being charged with duties, while a thing is the object over which rights may be exercised. The thing. Now that's interesting, because it leads me to think of something that was written in the Bible. Can you see the screen change now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to look something up. I can't quote it off the top of my head, so I'm going to see if I can find it here. Okay, so Genesis 1:26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. That's just what I thought of there. The thing. What would that thing perhaps be? The body, that dead body that we're presumed to be all of our lives, which has put us in a place of surety to the big scam, binding us to this debt creature. Being subservient to the people that are meant to be really serving us.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. What a scam. What a scam.
I'll take you back to the screen share.
Please do.
And we'll continue. Okay, so continuing on, and we were up to point number, where was I? Point number 20, I think it was. So referring to the Mister, you've just eloquently covered that, so thank you. Point number 21, date of birth. The specification or mention in a written document of the time, day, month, year when the document was made. So when they're asking for your date of birth, they're asking for the date of birth of the legal entity, which is the registration date. However, if you give them your date of birth as the living man or woman, you're then tying yourself into that legal entity and basically assuming its position and calling yourself the legal entity.
Therefore,
So not
surety.
only are you doing it, yep. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, you're right.
Okay.
You're right, brother.
So not only are you assuming the legal entity, the name of the legal entity through the all caps name, you're also assuming its date of creation as your own. Yeah.
I can unfold more on that as well. I can give you a little story. With a telco company that I began an account with there, which I used the actual date of birth. So let's just say I was born on the 20th, it was registered, which was the date of birth, the birth being registered, which was stamped, say, the 28th. So I used the 28th. And it's quite interesting, really, because ever since I began that account there, I don't pay for it. It just keeps going. And then also, I mentioned earlier, in correlation to, when the fertilization takes place in mother. I'm not a midwife, or I don't claim to know too much about it, but you've got your fertilization, there's the placenta, the fetus, and the zygote. And when little Jimmy, or I think we're using Johnny, when little Johnny, when he actually forms, I'm not sure when that is though, but I think the fertilization is actually when Johnny's born. Okay. So to take on the man-made construct of Johnny being born when he comes out of mummy could perhaps be not correct. Therefore, we're taking on that construct of the man's idea of that, and therefore from birth we are godless. Thus, perhaps we lose our right because we are serving the two masters and mammon. That's my take on that as well. And that's perhaps another discussion for another day when we can get into that side of things and speak on a bit more of the crown and the zygote, placenta and stuff like that. But ultimately, you're taking on surety to, use that date of birth as you mentioned, Alex.
Yep. Correct. And something else something that Zev actually brought up the other night, which I wasn't aware of, and I did look into it, I couldn't quite find it, so I need to follow up with him. Apparently the word person is also defined in the Crimes Act 1900 under the glossary of terms. And it's defined as apparently a legal entity. Now I did go into can you guys see my screen? I did go into the Crimes Act and I looked up person. I couldn't actually even find a glossary section. Now he's in New South Wales. He's in northern New South Wales. I'm assuming he was referring to New South Wales legislation. That's why I went to legislation.newsouthwales.gov.au. But I only did that after I had gone to the national federal legislation. I couldn't find it there either. In fact, I couldn't find a Crimes Act 1900 in the federal legislation.
Actually in Queensland, and there's a Crimes Act of 1899.
Okay. The Crimes Act at the federal level, this one here, is dated 1914, I believe.
Yep.
Let me just see if I can. Yeah, 1914. And there was no Crimes Act earlier than that I could see. And the New South Wales one is dated at 1900. So I'm assuming this is the one he was referring to, but I couldn't even find a glossary. So I'm really keen to get that, because as I mentioned at the start, this call this discussion today is essentially about us solidifying everything that's being said with evidence. being able to supply the evidence for everything that we're saying. Because I think those
This song is dedicated to all those people throughout human history who've lost their lives in the name of religion. But more specifically, this song is dedicated to all those people throughout human history who've killed in the name of religion. Listen. I'm dreaming of a world with no gods at all, no separation, nobody taking sides at all, no holocaust, no one indoctrinating our children, no religious fanatics flying planes into our buildings, everybody playing in the game of life in which they can't lose instead of killing for an invisible man they can't prove. Nobody dying over a book, no crusades, no war on terror headed by Bush. I'm dreaming of a world where there is no such place as the Bible Belt. Instead of looking up, you look inside yourself, and when you do find yourself, you gon' help somebody else instead of praying you eat well to maintain your body's health. Now that's what I call a dream. I'm just glad that I have one like Martin Luther King. Maybe this religion ain't really all that it seems, but it happened. So until it ends, I'ma keep rapping. That's what I call a dream. My dream. Rational response, why? My dream. That's what I call a dream. My dream. That's what I call a dream. I'm dreaming of a world where a young little girl doesn't have to shake her ass after class to get a referral from a boy that she likes and she doesn't like herself, thinking that boy's like would help. I'm dreaming of a world without a religion that tells me that I'm not good enough as soon as I'm born, that I need to be saved from a decision I didn't make, that I need to pay for a piece of fruit that I never ate. I'm dreaming of a better place than a city with roads paved of gold with bigger pearls on better gates, and it all happens right here, right now, while I'm still rapping, and we keep it nice and tight like gift wrapping. I'm dreaming of a world where God doesn't hate the facts, where manifest destiny says you have to take it back, whatever you stole from whatever race who's owed anything. But mind you, these are my dreams. That's what I call a dream. My dream. Rational response, why? My dream. That's what I call a dream. My dream. That's what I call a dream. Dream. My dream is that everybody can see this, where we all carry knowledge around like Rich Rodriguez and Brooke Hawkins. My dream is to be walking with Stephen Hawking right on the beach, talking theory. If y'all can hear me, we can make this come true, instead of wondering what in the hell this world's come to. Instead of fighting wars for religion, we can give praise and make lords of our children. I'm dreaming of a world where nobody is suspect, where rational response members doesn't get death threats. In fact, rational response squad doesn't exist, cause there really is no need for it. My dream is peace and harmony around me, nothing but tranquility and serene surroundings. And that's why you'll get nothing but the best stuff out me, cause all I really want is to make my dreams a reality for real. That's what I call a dream. My dream. Rational response, why? My dream. That's what I call a dream. My dream. That's what I call a dream. Dream. I love you guys. There ain't another group of people out there who I can just sit back and express myself to. And that's what this is really all about. Just getting all this stuff off my chest. You know? You guys are like my own personal therapists.
Cheers, guys.
Okay, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.